All right, Doug, thanks for joining us. We're here with Doug Stuart, our illustrious web designer, Charisma Lewis, business development expert, and I'm just here for the comments. So we're talking about a successful web project and what that looks like. So Doug, take it away. Talk a little bit about the setup for a good web project.
Yeah. So when I think of a successful web project, one of the things, if I go to a website, the message has to be clear. What does this company do for me? Within a few seconds, I need to know what this company does and why should I do business with them. If I don't know that, I'm not going to stick around. And too often, website owners, like business owners, they want people to know all about them, and that's great. But that's not what people are asking. They're not asking about you unless they're already knowing they're going to do business with you and they're just going to be really sure. But most people are like, okay, what are you offering for me, right? And when people are asking that question, you need to tell them what you offer, what you do for them. So you could easily say, have this really clever tagline that's unique to your industry. And, you sit in your office, you get together with a team and you come up with this clever tagline and it makes complete sense until you kind of test it on people who don't know what you're talking about, or it's a little bit too insidery language. And so that's not helpful for your business. So yeah, it's clever and you might use that down the road. You might use it on, as you scroll down the page or whatever, but you want to be very, very clear what's going on. And then the second thing I think of is what do they do? Like business owners think that, oh, well, they know that they just know to email me or call me if they want to do business with me. No, you got to tell them to click here now and do business with me, and or to ask about what it would look like even further. And you can also spell it out a little bit, like give them like the steps. Now, everybody knows that no matter almost anything except for just a quick purchase and hit buy, it goes in the mail, you get it and enjoy your product. With those few exceptions, every process in working with a business is many, many, many steps. But you got to break them down into simple steps so that people can visualize, oh, it's easy to do business with you, or it's worth it to do business with you. So those are probably like the first three things that I think of is clarity of what you're offering the person, what should they do about it, and what does that process look like?
Yeah, and summarizing those three things in a web environment also is different than other materials. Someone might have, we've seen that a lot where someone will say, well, I've got, a great catalog, or I have a great email marketing system, but their web presence might be lacking. And that's going to be a part of, say, the funnel that any of their customers, even if it's not an e-commerce, you mentioned an e-commerce experience, but even just the informational process for an entrepreneur, being able to make a sale, being able to have someone find them on social and then go somewhere and get that 1, 2, 3. What's their message? What do they do? And then what's the call to action?
I mean, one environment I think of this is think of like financial advisors. For a financial advisor, that's a huge amount of information. I mean, you usually have those meetings where you go in and you meet the person who's going to be handling your money. And you want to be able to, talk about your ambitions for life and your retirement goals and all that. You can't do that. And it's not very transactional. That's more relational. But when you go to their website, or when someone tells you, hey, this is my guy, you should go check him out. You go to their website. Yeah, that you're supposed to pick up the phone and call because that that's going to be a bigger process. But like, imagine if it were really clear, hey, we really want to work with you. We'll spend 15 minutes on the phone with you for free. You could do some sort of like transitional call to action that like gets me to say, oh, well, if it's just a few minutes just to kind of get the basics, yeah, I'll do that. I don't have to go down to their office 30 minutes away and sit with them for an hour and spend my afternoon, thinking about all this. I'm just not ready for that, but what
it
you
can
are,
be a simple solution.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
People are ready for small steps. And if you have a website that is big step based, and a lot of business to business is very, especially if you're like selling large expense equipment, anything that's really high expense or investment is going to be big, I would call big steps. So you can find a way to get people to take small steps, and then you've started your relationship. Even if it might take a few more months or maybe even years, depending, you've built that small relationship and you've made that connection.
And I think that's key. And Charisma, I want to ask you what some of your perspective on being out there, especially right now, the time that this is being recorded, June 2020, right in the middle of one of the craziest years for a lot of marketers, probably. But Doug, I like what you said, breaking it down into if there's a big step process, what is on your web presence? What's that small process you can nail and get right? And Charisma, I know you've got a lot of thoughts on all the different kinds of businesses right now, and they each need to take those steps. What are you seeing out there in the world of, say, the medical offices, the startups?
So just even talking to patients nowadays, 80% of them say, I found my doctors looking at social media or on the website. So I think it's very important. I like the fact that you showcase and included what they need to do and what entails on having the website. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you think it's important to showcase themselves on the website or having a website, Doug?
Yeah. So, when you talk about any particular, like even medical practice, I mean, people need to have the ability to have details that they want without being overwhelmed and inundated with it like right away. It's like, feed me the amount of information I can handle. And so you need to let them sort of decide, that throttle, if you will, to mix my metaphors a bit. So it's really important to communicate what you do and why you do it for people. So whether it's for, in a medical industry or anything, it's like, how can I serve you? I hope that gets to the heart of it. Maybe there's a follow-up there.
Yeah, I think that's talking about how we might have a presence and hear about a customer hears about a business on one channel. They could click around, but then having that one place where they can take those small steps and not try to have to get everything across in that one video or in that one post. That post click, maybe we could say, addressing that.
I mean, with websites, I mean, one thing to say here is you can control the experience when you have a website. And the other thing I'm thinking of with your question about like the time right now, June 2020, where some of America is coming out of this shutdowns due to COVID. And there are a lot of businesses that there's kind of an uncertainty about what businesses are going to be available, what services are going to be available. Are these businesses going to last? I mean, everybody's probably at their heart, they want to be like, well, I want to go out and support local businesses because I don't want, as many businesses as possible to thrive. And so if you're the kind of business that is thriving, people need to know that. The last thing that's going to communicate that is a website designed in 1996 or 2000, or for that matter, 2006, or maybe even 2016, depending on the design trends of your industry. So, communicating that you're up on the curve, that can help as well. I mean, I don't want to overstate the importance of, doing other things to make sure your business is thriving and viable. Because I know some people are like, well, that's the last thing we need to think about. We need to think about serving your customers because we're just opening our doors. But having that presence for your new customers is going to be really critical.
Yeah, I think it's a great time to clean up and make sure that the presence in what you're communicating amidst all this uncertainty, a customer might not even know, like you said, that they're open. Having a strong, say, a slight search presence upgrade, and then having that web presence, they can click there. And I know that in the world of social, they might be seeing social media pages and they don't necessarily know, like, is that really current? Is it? But if it's updated on their website and a message like, we are now open, for instance, that 1, 2, 3 combo. Charisma, what are some of the things that you would say to communicate right now, specifically medical practices? You mentioned a few things earlier, but any small business, what are some of those things that you really think we should be featuring in a web project right now?
So just talking about the healthcare space, I think because we're opening here in LA or in the Ventura County, I think when you have a website, then you're able to say and address, here are the things that we're going to cover when we open the doors. We're going to check your temperature. We're going to have the PPE available for you. So, but without having presence online, you're not able to give this information to the public. And so I think in the healthcare space, I think that's very important.
Yeah. I saw something.
Comfort. Yeah.
I saw something while driving the other day. It was a local tanning salon. It said, check our Facebook page for updates. I was like, Okay, that's fine. But like when I think of a, local tanning salons, I'm not looking for the Facebook pages. I'm gonna do a search on Google and it's gonna come up on the
Mhm.
map and it's gonna be like, oh, there they are. And I'm like, oh, they don't have a website. And I mean, goodness, I'm on Facebook all the time. I know that this exists. This is my space, but it's like I don't think to go to Facebook page to look for an update. And
Right.
so,
Unless you're
uh,
already a fan. See, that's a key thing for new
yeah,
business acquisition. You're not
yeah,
going to want to do that.
right,
It's
Yep.
like
yeah.
it's like a front
So
door, right?
yeah. So imagine you have a website and you need a page that has an update that's necessary on like what is this going to look like, because we're still in Pennsylvania, we're still in this yellow phase where it's like, certain percent capacity and all of that. Well, what does that look like? Well, you're not going to call the business. They're, hopefully they're too busy to answer the phone, right? So you're going to go to their website. Well, from a web developer's perspective, one of the things that I try to do, and this is, I'm always willing to help people do the things that they're like too busy to do. But like, imagine if you didn't have control over your website and you had to always hire somebody to do small updates, for things as simple as like, hey, here's what a post-COVID shutdown world looks like for our business. That's a page that's in my experience with my clients is a simply designed page that's already been designed. All they have to do is create the page and type up what they need to say. They don't need to hire me hours upon hours. And again, I'm happy to do that for anybody. But like, imagine you have the keys to your own building and you can put up your own signs. And that sort of
Right.
metaphor applies to web. And that's how I approach web stuff. I don't want people dependent on me, but they can call me if they want.
That's a great approach to web. And I think a lot of times it's that comfort level that let's say an entrepreneur or a doctor, who also are entrepreneurs, anyone that has a business presence they want to be able to feel in control of is key. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
times, correct me if I'm wrong, Charisma and Doug both, but a lot of times I think it seems like it's this insurmountable thing. It's this big undertaking, or that if it's not and it's easy, then it'll be cheap or not functional. So knowing that you having a focus on being able to turn over the keys, so to speak, and at least build in
Hmm.
some functionality where that business owner is empowered to say, hey, I can control not just what's
Yeah.
on social. Everyone can post on Facebook pages or LinkedIn.
Right. Right.
And understanding being able to make some of those updates to the web, I think, are empowering.
Yeah.
So Doug, if we could talk a little bit about leading up to getting started for a web project. Okay, an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, business owner, they're like, okay, I'm going to throw down on a web project. What are some of the best things, maybe a few steps to prep for successfully handing that off to a designer developing team to have
Yeah.
a great web project?
Yeah, so some of these might be a little bit more like utilitarian, like here's what I actually have to have me or my staff do, before or right after we agree to do some sort of web project. But some of it is just a matter of like getting your thoughts together on like what it is that you want to communicate. I can't read people's minds. I'm really striving. I'm taking some courses on how to do that, but I don't know if that's going to actually pan out. And
It's a good
so
cross skill
yeah, right.
to develop.
Yeah. So it's I do very well at understanding what people want to get out of their website, but sometimes, depending on what it is, I can't read your mind on what you want to communicate. So you kind of have to have a sense of like what you want to communicate, and then we kind of take it from there. The other thing to think about with web development, as before I continue with the list, is that there's sort of two parts to it. There's the construction of it, if you will, and it's all the materials, like what kind of 2x4s and all of that you're going to order for your building, and then there's the whole like design and like who puts it in there. But when people talk about, I'm just going to go to my metaphor of like building a home, right? You think about curb appeal and what it looks like for your website. That is what you're saying and how the person feels when they're looking at your website. And so that is what we call messaging. And that messaging is about what is the feeling that it evokes? How is it communicating? What are the words being used? Are you causing your customers or potential customers to burn too many mental calories in order to, do business with you? You got to make sure, that that's something that you think through. So that's one aspect of web development. The other aspect is the actual building of it. A lot of people think of a web designer as somebody who simply does the building of the website. So one of the ways that I approach it is I can do one or both for you. I like to do both if that's possible. In part because it's a more extensive project because they work together. And so if you have, for instance, an architect that also does really, really well with design, that's a win-win for you, because now you're coordinating with one person. So with me, I want messaging to be consistent with the way that it looks and the way that it feels. So when you come to a meeting with any web designer, you want to ask yourself the question, what is it that I want to communicate? And then also be open to sort of answering questions that that designer slash marketer really wants to ask you, because they might help you think through the things that are going to communicate that better. You know, Nathan, I know that's one of your strengths, is to help people think through how do you reach the people that you want? Because a lot of times, I mean, I do this with my business. It's like, well, this is what I offer you. Do you want it? And that's not exactly the right approach. We kind of know that. I mean, that's just a kind of oversimplifying it. But that's the first thing to come through. It's like, hey, know that messaging is part of the website design. Website design is more than just your logo and making sure that things are matched up and all of that. I mean, to some extent, that's a given. It's like, well, of course your website's going to match your branding. I mean, why wouldn't we do that? I mean, maybe that's not a given to some web developers. I don't know. But, you know, of course we're going to match your branding. Of course we're going to have the right calls to action. Of course we're going to have your address at the bottom of every page or whatever. You know, so those things are sort of a given, but what's really important is the messaging. So you've got messaging, you've got then what I just mentioned, which is the assets that are required for building the site. You know, if you haven't touched a website in 6 to 8 years and it was some other developer, or maybe some older employee who's retired, or that they're retired, as in like they're no longer in your company. You know, you might not know where those files are. So you're gonna have to go find those files. So, you know, get that kind of stuff ready as well, as much as possible. And then just, you know, prepare a meeting, you know, schedule a meeting with somebody, because usually people like me, people like Nathan and Charisma, we're the kind of people that know how to come to the table with the right kind of questions and the right sort of direction that you want to, that you may want to go. And so coming to the table with those things is probably it. I'm sure like 20 minutes after we're done recording, I'm going to think of 6 other things, but usually it's just a handful of things you need to be ready. Because honestly, we always do, right? You know, we're on camera, it's, you know, whatever. So, you know, but honestly, simply come with just a preparedness mindset and able to communicate what is it that you want to do. That's a good start. I mean, I could give you a list of probably 10 things in, you know, by tomorrow morning. But like, really, are you going to remember all those 10 things? No, you're going to remember 1 or 2 things, and hopefully the 2 things I just told you.
So those would be get the messaging down, and really the, you know, think through the messaging, think through your assets that you do have. I think those are great things to summarize with, you know, for a business owner coming in. And
okay,
you know,
I thought of one more. Let me do that.
Oh yeah, what's one more? And then I've got one.
Just the bonus, right?
Sure.
The bonus is, okay, so here's what a lot of people do. What they do is they say, our competitors' websites look like this. Can you build me a website that's better than theirs?
Right.
Well, the answer is probably. But also, you know, if you have websites in mind, you're like, wow, I really like these. That's great. We'll look at those. We'll do our best to match what you need for your company that matches, you know, the flavor and culture and industry and so forth. Also consider the functionality of the website, of other industry websites. So if you do, I mean, everybody, you know, if you're in, say, the cabinet industry, you're not sitting around looking at cabinetry websites all the time. You're doing shopping. You're doing all kinds of things that are in your daily life. Pay attention to those websites that you like, the experience.
So
you may not
look
like
at some competitors just to figure out kind of where some
I'm
of
talking
them
about
are.
other industries completely. Like you may not
Other industries, right?
Yeah. I mean, you might buy, I would just say as an example, you might buy dog treats off of Etsy, but you're not in the craft business, right? And so, but you might be like, wow, I really like the checkout experience. And I know I need an e-commerce experience. Stuff like that. Pay attention to more than just the industry, because that is one way to keep ahead. That's one way to keep ahead of your competition. I mean, Steve Jobs made Apple great because he paid attention to the design elements and typography. It was typography and fonts that made Apple what it was, or started Apple the way it was. So, you know, pay attention to other industries too.
I love it. Charisma,
And
do you have some things to add? Yeah, I have a question to follow up with that. But Charisma, do you have anything to add to that prep list for a business owner? I know you've worked on a ton of web projects.
Maybe Doug, you can tell us what, you know, why it's important to have a website, why you should have presence. I think talking to a lot of people and talking to a lot of physicians, a lot of them don't really know why it's important. Sometimes you can Google and have a website.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
nailing the reason why they want it, basically. Like, what's your purpose for needing one? Are you really sold on the need for it, for instance? Yeah, that's key.
Yeah, I mean, two things that come to my mind are, one, for the most part, most people don't want to go to the doctor. Okay, they don't want to necessarily go there for the most part, and so having that ability to give them information that will alleviate any anxiety they might have, that would be one thing. The second thing is, it's almost like it's a storefront before it's people walk up to the building. Okay, what's the experience going to be like? Okay, now that is something that everybody, I mean, that's where the anxiety might come from for something like a doctor's office or whatever. It's like, what's the experience going to be like? What information do I need to know? I don't want to come in and like feel like I don't know anything. And so websites can be, sort of educational to a small extent. And you get to control all of that if it's your website, and you get to have it in one place. So you can post things on Facebook, right? You can post this information. Hey, here's what it's going to be like to walk into our offices now. Well, if people see that, that's great, but they might not actually know to scroll through your feed or click on that tab that says about, or click on that other tab that you've customized to make whatever. Right. But if you've got a website, you get to show them exactly what they need to see and what they're looking for. So there's a lot of functionality there, and a lot of usefulness. And if you're ahead of the game, what you're going to do, what your website's going to do among your competitors, is going to give them not too much information, but more information than they need so that they can get what they want. So, I'm actually learning something about
by on the bare minimums. Yeah. In other words, you're not just giving them it's the place where it can really,
like, if they want to,
all those details.
Right. And if they want to keep digging, they can keep digging if they want to, but you're not like inundating them with paragraph after paragraph. Nobody wants to read paragraph after paragraph until they've actually said, okay, I need to know more because I'm probably going to go there.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent, Doug. And I know that we've got a lot of great projects pending right now in our world. So it's exciting to get more lined up, and excited for a lot more small business owners, especially in this crazy time, figuring out their messaging, getting it out there in a place that can drive new business, and kind of force their hand on, like, hey, it's time to upgrade. It's time to take those steps. Yeah. So we're looking forward to that. And thank you both for your time.
Yeah. Thanks, man. It was great.